Just when I thought I'd learned everything worth knowing about Elizabeth Holmes in Theranos, there was one thing I was a little surprised to discover regarding how the company was run. What was that? Stay tuned and I'll tell you on this episode of The Savvy Report. I'm Ernie Martin, founder and CEO of Receivable Savvy. I recently watched The Dropout, a miniseries that premiered on Hulu earlier this year that follows the rise and fall of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, the company she started in 2003 as a 19-year-old. As most may recall, Theranos was the darling of Silicon Valley and a rising biotech innovator quickly after it was launched. Since then, the company has folded, and Elizabeth Holmes was convicted earlier this year on 3 counts of wire fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud. While she awaits sentencing, she could face up to 20 years in prison and pay over $250,000 in fines, in addition to a yet-to-be-determined dollar amount in restitution. Although I was familiar with the story of Holmes and Theranos, I found the miniseries on Hulu very entertaining because they did a pretty good job of sharing details around how she and Sunny Balwani, the former president and COO of Theranos, actually met while she was still a student at Stanford. The program also chronicled how their relationship developed and how he became involved in Theranos. The series stars Amanda Seyfried, and you may know her from the movies Mean Girls and Mamma Mia. And it also stars Naveen Andrews, who you'll probably recognize from the very popular TV series Lost. After watching the show, I decided to dig a little deeper into what happened at Theranos and how they could be valued at $10 billion at their height with no real technology that actually worked. You see, Theranos, unlike many companies of their size and value, did not have a chief financial officer. Well, actually they initially did, but let me explain. The CFO they did have, Henry Mosley, was CFO for only a few minutes. As the story goes, when Theranos tested their machine that was designed to analyze a drop of blood, those machines would often malfunction. As a result, when those demonstrations were held for potential investors, what was shown was not a true demonstration, but a pre-recorded, successful demonstration. Not good. When Mosley realized those investor demonstrations were not true demonstrations, in addition to the fact that Holmes asked him to inflate revenue forecasts, he decided to confront her on these issues. Long story short, Holmes didn't enjoy being challenged, Mosley was accused of not being a team player, and he was immediately fired. Now, one might think that a company like Theranos might be in the market for a new CFO, right? But as it turns out, they were not. In fact, they didn't replace Mosley and instead positioned corporate controller Denise Yam as their head financial executive. Now, the challenge with doing this is that Yam apparently made very unrealistic revenue projections as well, identifying $35 million and $100 million as revenue targets for 2014 and 2015, respectively. In some instances, Holmes shared documents showing revenue projections of $140 million and $990 million in those 2 consecutive years. But in reality, the company only made a measly $100,000 in 2014 and only $500,000 in 2015. If this reminds you of financial scandals like Enron and WorldCom, it should. But there is a difference when making these comparisons. Unlike Enron and WorldCom, Theranos was privately held and was a fraud from the beginning, never once proving that the technology they claimed was revolutionary actually worked. The issue for Theranos was much bigger than shady accounting practices. But It goes to show that financial executives, like CFOs, have a critical role to play in ensuring companies they work for follow generally accepted accounting procedures, and that their books can stand up to outside scrutiny. The Hulu show, The Dropout, was very entertaining indeed, and I would encourage you to check it out if you haven't already, especially if you like movies about corporate intrigue and things of that nature. If you would like to know more about Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, check out the book by Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou, titled Bad Blood: Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup. It goes into even more detail about the Theranos scandal and how Holmes led perhaps the most surprising corporate scandal in Silicon Valley history. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the like button, and that helps us make our videos available to even more people. If you would like to know when new videos are available, hit the subscribe button, and you'll be the first to know when a new video and a new episode is broadcast. Thanks for joining us on this episode of The Savvy Report, and we'll see you next time.